What's up there, guys? Thanks for tuning in. I'm Rick. This is Fanfare for the Conscious, and in the video today, we've got my powwow with Mark Sleigh. Let's dive in. Thank you very much for joining us today, guys. This is an extra special episode of Fanfare for the Conscious, and today I'm going to be here with Mark James of the Family Sleigh. He is the guy I've recently referenced on one of my YouTube videos where I was talking about the UK using its coronavirus legislation to silence political dissidents. So I met Mark Sleigh around about 5 years ago. I was looking into the Ubuntu movement at the time. If anybody hasn't done any research on that, it's definitely worth looking into. Unfortunately, it has basically fallen apart now, but it was a really good idea. And there's a lot of really good core beliefs there. And the first time I ever saw Mark, he was basically on TV talking about how the banks were corrupt and challenging the local MPs on that. And ever since that, we've been in fairly regular touch via Facebook and via phone calls. And we've sort of always kept an eye on what each other have been doing, I think, and just been, on this journey together. Into trying to liberate the whole planet from this tyranny. So, Mark, would you like to sort of talk about where you've come from and the Ubuntu movement, and then what's gone on from there, and how you were brought to this situation whereby the police were turning up at your house to station you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've lived a life of fairly simple nature as far as careers go. I started off as a precision engineer from school. Then went into doing youth work within motorsport and extreme sports. And then I went on to manage the Birmingham BMX racetrack for 4 or 5 years. And from there, stepped into politics and been a freelance jack of all trades, I suppose, in many, many different areas, but training in that time within shamanism and how to heal oneself. And indeed, from stepping into the general election and shouting Mother Ayahuasca's name and the other tools and the other technologies of shamanism, I put myself on a radar where I had to heal myself without a shadow of a doubt. In order to be here, still flying that flag of peace and holding that torch of shamanism, of that power, and now to being into the belly of the beast, still shouting about that, and still claiming our freedom and our rights. And yeah, it's been a beautiful journey of training, of understanding, overstanding, and innerstanding of what this journey for some can see to what it's all about. It's not the same for all of us. We'll have individual, unique perceptions, but for seeing with eyes wide open, all third eye centers, all 3 eye centers, the heart, the physical eyes, and the pineal gland wide open in the belly of the beast, in being sectioned into a mental hospital. It's been very interesting. But that's a very, very brief outline of my life before the scenario 3 or 4 weeks ago.
So your journey into shamanism is when you went to Peru, wasn't it?
Yeah, literally.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I had the calling from the shaman there. As I said, I was shouting the ayahuasca's name, and the research, or sharing all the research, as you saw yourself, through Ubuntu into shamanism. So I was viewing myself as, I could possibly help the Ubuntu movement or help the NHS move towards plant medicines. Having researched that since 2011, 2012, discovering the truth about cannabis, discovering that we've been lied to, I felt that I could be assistance in that way. And from having shouted the Vine of the Dead, Mother Aya, her name, very loudly, probably very foolishly in many ways as well, I had a message come from Peru. Can't remember if it was email or through Messenger, But one of the shamans said, we had ceremony last night and Mother Ayahuasca came to me and said, contact the man standing in the election shouting my name and get him here as quick as possible. And then the message said, I found you, so get here as soon as possible. So I couldn't say no to that as a calling. Yeah, so literally felt like being headhunted by a plant.
The shaman contacted you?
Yeah, the shaman contacted me to say the vine of the dead, Mother Ayahuasca, the spirit of Ayahuasca came to them in ceremony to guide them to look, because they've got the internet there, it's been amazing in the Sacred Valley, to look upon the internet to find the man shouting, about freedom and the plant medicines in the election because he needs your help. And, without their protections and their help, in certain aspects of my life, I'd have struggled to have made it through what I've made it through, and the support I've had all around me from family, friends, and contacts through the vital points when I've needed that support has been amazing. And without doubt, when you step up to a very high political level, i.e. standing in a general election, and you put yourself on that radar, especially if you're standing there shouting about shamanic power, you get put on certain radars that need to be addressed. And we're talking, practices of those in the opposite occult, of the practice of the work of, the gods as such. Yeah, the dark side that is used against us. I don't want to say too much about that problem, but luckily we do have all the people in this world and the plants in this world that can help us through any of those attacks and whatever else jiggery pokery might be played against people that choose to stand up against the system. But there's appropriate level help for every disease. The old saying, the old proverb, that for every disease there's a herb or there's a plant medicine, and there is. So for whatever level of political world we're in, whatever level of physical disease we are in, mental disease, or any other aspect of life, financial, whatever problems we are having manifest in our lives or in our physical health, there is a plant to counterbalance that and bring it back to a place of peace and neutrality. And then we can empower ourselves with that. And some of the biggest wounds become the biggest source of our power too, and help us unlock skills and the solutions to then share with others how we've then helped ourselves out of that place of darkness, or experiencing the brush with the darkness, however we brush up against it.
Yeah, I totally believe that, totally. In the same way that the human body already has within it the mechanisms by which it can expel toxicity from its being, we as a body of people, as a collective entity of humanity, have the tools within us to remove the toxicity from our life. Exactly the same. And I think, like people like you and people like me and Michael Obanisia and all the people out there who are taking this fight to them now, and trying to unite everybody else to expel this toxicity, we're like the immune system of the greater body, so to speak.
We are, and we're highly interconnected, and from seeing the higher purpose of each person's or each one of the people's role here, we can see the light within every single person, and even within the dark side as well. We can see their divine purpose of how this all fits together as a big system of awakening. And the more we empower ourselves, the more we heal ourselves, the more we can put ourselves in a position of being used by the good forces as a force of good power. And without a doubt, going into that cuckoo house just and seeing what I've seen and being the channel for higher consciousness in such a place, and seeing, with, as I said earlier, with my eyes wide open to perceive on a shamanic level what goes on in that place and what was going on through myself as a channel as well. It was absolutely amazing and a true honor. Because we are a channel, a receiver of consciousness, and also a creator too, without doubt. But at times in certain spaces and places over the last 5 years, I've really seen now through the plant guidance and through an experience in a place like that with no plant medicines at all, apart from herbal teas, to really see how we can be used as like an antenna of consciousness through wherever we are in this world, receiving that earth and source energy, and then it's beaming out from us, and we haven't got much of a choice in that instance. And that's where, to see that being done through ourselves is like, wow, this is amazing. But we can also see how if someone's not prepared for that, or if it's worked in the opposite way, how that can really make someone go completely crazy, And it's knowing the right tools to use to be able to handle that power and be that conduit for higher consciousness, because by God, we need enough people to understand now how to do that and how to hold our shit together in deepest of darkness.
You can't feed a baby adult food.
Yeah, very true.
You've got to pitch whatever information is required to that person at the level that they're at, and you've got to be able to recognize what information they're ready for, and what, because again, like a baby will choke on a proper meal. You've got to give them something nice and mushy and that's easy for them to digest, because if you don't do that, then you'll never get through to them and they'll just reject the information.
Yeah, and there's also another layer above that maybe if the parents before conception practiced just living fruit, seed and nut, and lived as breatharians a lot of the time somehow, and through urine treatment and through psilocybin through conception, pregnancy, and through breastfeeding, might not even ever have to feed the child a normal meal, and maybe give birth to then full breatharian children. But can you imagine that for a commitment?
I think we're talking a few thousand years of human evolution to get back to that.
I mean, there are people in the world, though. There are beautiful, blessed people that are experimenting with psilocybin, as I say, during conception. And their theory, I can't remember the names of the beautiful people that bring this information forward, but not their theory, their experience is that they are at conception with the soul of their child coming through at the conception.
Well,
so as the spark comes, as the sperm's going into the egg, so the spark, they're literally communing in psilocybin or DMT space, and then with the actual soul of their child coming into into the womb. That's like
that's fantastic.
So I mean, we can imagine then that through breastfeeding that child and microdosing, etc. You can see the level of how some of the children in this world are going to be of that next generation level, where those children will probably be the ones that will give birth to children that then can survive without food, maybe. Because
well, in theory, from certain ways of thinking, when the child is first incarnated and first takes their first breath, they are still in full cognition of the way life was before, when they were still the infinite source consciousness. They've not fully gone through what they call the veil of forgetting yet, because the only way it's possible for a soul to function with this level of limitation after having been an infinite source being is to forget what it was like. It's too traumatic to be able to hold on to that memory, because of how limited the human form is and how limited the place that they are in is, if that makes sense. However, if they were born into a place where that limitation wasn't necessarily present, then perhaps they wouldn't need to go through that veil of forgetting in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can see where that's coming from.
I'm just theorizing, because I know ultimately, like, as a human being, you're never going to fully comprehend the infinite. It's just not possible. As a physically incarnate being. And it's not the point either, is it, really?
No, and that's the cheeky
point
thing.
to experience the limitation.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the cheeky thing of being able to can sit here for myself and say I've been through many ceremonies where I've definitely felt like I've gone through death,
Yeah.
complete
Oh yeah.
utter death, and to be at one with infinite source in that limited time reassures oneself that we don't need to know everything during this
No,
human
we don't.
experience.
You're right. You're right. We don't need to know
And
it.
we could know it all, and we could be in that infinite space and power. But for the moment, for our lives where we are at the moment, it would be too much. So it would probably be in like 7 generations, maybe. A friend, Holly, had a message through Spirit that it could take up to 7 generations to clear this all up. So
Oh
once we
yeah. Oh
start
yeah.
fully implementing all the solutions, then the 7th generation of children from now, they'll be the ones that will be fully breatharian and be able to be fully interdimensional magicians, because we know magic's real. We've seen
Oh
enough
yeah.
magic on the television that it's definitely real. There's no
Well, I
two
mean,
ways
you'd
about
call it
some of it.
magic, I'd call it science, but they're the same thing. You
Yeah,
know, it's just
yeah,
sacred science that's been hidden from us.
yeah. And it's working with beings as well, without doubt. You know, there's
Yeah.
genies. There are genies, without
If
doubt.
you could
Yeah.
be fully in power and fully in control of your vibrational settings, so to speak, you could be at any place and any time and anywhere and any when in the universe of multiple everything that you wanted to be, because your place and your time are all just functions of that vibration, and it's that changing vibration that allows you to move through it. If you could, you know, change your vibration like that, you could appear on the surface of Mars if you wanted to.
Yeah, yeah. I've had
But it's just being at that level of intimate control of your being and being aware of it and knowing how to modify that, because we're so used to operating as purely physical entities, we don't recognize that we're part of this infinite frequency, and we're not actually here. I'm not actually here in this room. I just am choosing to have the illusion of being in this room.
Yeah, I'll totally agree with that. I mean, there's some ceremonies where, with the combination of Amanita muscaria, the red and white mushrooms, and then
Yes, yeah.
Atlantis truffles, highly telepathic experiences. Several times I've used those, and a friend
I think we're
Calvin.
living in Atlantis, you know.
I think
Speaking of Atlantis,
we could be living
this is the
in.
land of Atlantis.
Yeah, we could be living in the Garden of Eden. It's just been very poisoned, you know.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's all the churches are all beautiful, but they've been hijacked.
Of course they are. Because the divine knowledge has been corrupted by man to serve his own ends rather than the ends of the God consciousness.
Yeah, yeah. And to tap into that God consciousness, once we tap into the entheogenic realms, especially through the mushrooms, and I think one of the biggest secrets that has not been truly discovered or explored, it's been discovered, or it's truly been explored, is the combination of Amanita and psilocybin. Because I had telepathic power over my telephone once, one ceremony, it was about 3.5, 4 years ago. A friend was lying down and he says, "Oh, could you turn this song off, Mark? It feels like we've been somewhere forever." And with Amanita, you can get stuck in time loops. And it felt like that. It felt like we'd been in this place for 10,000 hours. And it got a bit boring, and it started to feel a bit like, a bit anxious and spiky. So like, I'll pause the song. So I paused the song. And he says, "Could you put the one on from earlier?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I know the one you mean, that one." "No, not that one, the other one." "Oh, the other one, that one. It's Trevor Hall's song." And he goes, "Yeah, that's the one." I said, "Oh, yeah, great." The phone was 6 foot away. And in the morning I said, "Bro, did I actually touch my phone, or did I do that like telepathically?" And he said, "No, you didn't touch your phone, man." So it was literally intuitively, telepathically controlling the phone. In the same, it was crazy, mate. And it'd be lovely to be able to recreate that, or experiment with that with myself. Now then, later on, I had a telepathic internal voice, which you can experience in high-level ceremonies, and it basically said you can teleport across the room. I gave it as an instant suggestion. There's no, I find it's like an instant an instant knowing of whatever is being communicated to you is communicated. And it said basically you can teleport across the room. I was like, I felt a bit of fear from within myself. I was like, no, Tar, because I thought, what if I don't reappear? So there's a bit of doubt.
Yeah.
So you can't go into any magic with doubt.
No.
I was like, no. I said, objects first, please. And then later on, about an hour or so later, I was in a little bit of a trance. Obviously, as you get in and out of trances, as you're going through so many different music and different meditations. And I was in a bit of a trance, and I was just looking at the glass of water on the table in front of me, and it disappeared and then reappeared from one space to in an instant. So with that and many other telepathic experiences that I've had, I can say without a doubt, I agree with what you said, and I feel that we can be of that power of full God consciousness as such, to be able to teleport and do telepathy and levitate. But it's also knowing that we're part of all other beings, and beings are part of us as one supreme consciousness. But it's also then for us to weigh up the level of magic that we use as well. And if we're tapping into any other beings or not, and if we are, who or what are we tapping into for their power? Because there's a lot of magicians that are tapping into beings that are not good. They're really not good beings. And we've got to be very careful of whom we work with, for healers, for ourselves, for who we work with on the other side, our ancestors, what spirits we're calling upon, what plant spirits we're working with, whether we're working with the correct polarity of that plant. Like the coca plant, people still snort cocaine out there, and obviously that's a very bad dark side of the coca leaf. However, if we work with a pure coca leaf through shaman properly, it's an absolutely divine plant medicine.
But this is like shown by modern medicine, that this importance of nature, because so many of modern medicine, and it's the way it's done, I think a lot of the healing properties are corrupted, but a lot of it is derived from natural plants, isn't it? Like there's I can't remember what tree it is that you get aspirin from. There's is it sycamore or something like that. There's one of the trees that is the native source for aspirin, and I mean, God, some of the best painkillers on the planet are all derivatives of heroin, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's like even the new doctors coming through, they're acknowledging and recognizing that the pharmaceutical is taking away some of nature, and they're actually acknowledging that the shaman, that all the ancient healers, all the ancient tribes around the world who are into the different forms of healing are doing it correctly, because they're using the whole plant for the most of their plant medicine.
In England, you can get a pharmaceutical derivative of CBD, THC, but you can't go and grow. They won't let you grow the plant yourself. God forbid you actually try and save yourself a bit of money and access it naturally.
No.
Have these pills instead.
Have this nasal spray or whatever else they're offering. Did I tell you the story about when I went to the doctors to ask for raw organic cannabis flower so it would save me some money?
I bet that was hilarious.
Well, she said, "How are you?" And I said, "I'm fine. I'm not too bad." I said, "I do have some dentistry I'd like to get on top of. So there's some metal in the face that shouldn't be there, mercury. I want to get rid of that." I said, "Other than that, I'm not too bad. I am, however, struggling financially still." And I said, one of the areas is because I have to, buy my cannabis to smoke for helping my mental health, and just helping me celebrate life and be at peace. And I do find, she is my medicine. And I must have bamboozled her straight away. And she said, "Well, have you driven your car today?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, have you smoked today?" I thought, "Well, yeah, I had literally one puff, hours ago in the morning." I said, "Well, yeah." And she went, "Oh, well, you're manic. You can't drive." And I was like, "I'm in a good mood." I was just in a good mood, asking to see if I could, be cheeky and be a bit of a jester and ask for raw cannabis flower. And she says, no, you can't go anywhere. Hold on, I'll get someone else to assess you, and you can't drive. And I was like, what? Next thing you know, this other doctor's walked in. He literally looked over his glasses, looked at me up and down, hasn't said a word to me, looked at me up and down. He's going, you're manic, you can't drive.
What?
I was like, wow, man, you've got like X-ray vision eyes that scan someone's whole consciousness in one moment. You go, yeah, you're manic, you can't drive. What the fuck? I was like, yo, you guys are crazy. And they says, we're ringing the police. I was like, oh, you can ring anyone you like. I'm out of here. You're fucking nuts. See you later. And my wife, bless her, how she hasn't killed me over the years, the lovely wifey, I don't know. But Kate was outside, and I was like, honey, deal with them, because I'm out of here. See you later. See you back at home. And I just had to, run off in case I had a vision getting fucking excuse my French, my language, sorry. I had a vision of getting tasered, in the police, in the doctor's surgery. Yeah, so anyway, I drove home nice and gently at 15, 20 miles an hour, just pooting along, not stoned, I might add, obviously completely and utterly straight-laced. And, next thing I know, the police are travelling up and down the road outside my house at 40-odd miles an hour with the blue lights on, tear-arsing around looking for our address. And then they finally come to rest outside our property. For me then to, for us to invite the police sergeant, there's a sergeant in, he sent the other two bobbies off. And the sergeant came in and we explained the full rights of God to him, and he understood and he agreed. And I poked him in his chest and I said, you will help guard, anything that we do here, because we have a house of God, a house of healing, and whatever we work with plant medicines is for good. Yeah. And it was totally cool. So that was one of the run-ins of the police and the health service regarding plant medicines. And only about 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the incident of getting sectioned, I complained again to the doctors to resurrect what's happened about this incident, because you've literally, and then I've gone back again to check with them about another, with another doctor, and that she was trying to tell me that cannabis is bad, and she didn't even know that it heals cancers illegally, or helps people, come to the space where they can heal their own cancers holistically with other methods as well, because it's not just cannabis, it's a holistic approach. But yeah, she's given out this information as a young nurse that cannabis is bad and it causes delusions, and so there's still another, not axe to grind, but a healing to be had with my local doctor's surgery for the way in which they treated myself in that instance. And a lot of this has been a bit of a social experiment, let's say, of what happens when we go and ask for a non-toxic flower from the doctors. Mental health services were rang there as well, so I had to go and see mental health services, because in 2015 I did get depressed when everything got on top of me from the election and everything else, all the energies and blah blah blah. It did get me into a real bad state. So because of that history of mental health, because of that because the doctors, they're paranoid, not mine, I had to go and see the mental health service. And then we could see how the whisper of the doctor's notes get really confused, because the people at the mental health home, the mental health hospital, one close to us, says, we have a note here saying that, because I mentioned Theresa May's husband growing cannabis in Devon. But how this got through to the mental health place was, he said the Prime Minister's husband has got metal in his face growing weed.
Oh my God.
I was like, what? I said, hold on a minute, this is a CPN, community nurse. I says, let me have a look at that, brother. What? I said, how? I said, no, I've got mercury in my face that I said I want to have sorted out at some point, but that's not available on the NHS, so it's a bit of a gripe at the NHS. And I said, Theresa May's husband's growing weed in Devon, which he is, and you can check that on all forms of media, including the mainstream press. And it's like, this shows what goes through the minds of doctors, police, and mental health services. They are mental. It's like one of the videos with the 4 people with a nappy on the face turning up at the door here. They are mental. The mental health service are mental. The nutters are running the asylum, really.
Very much get the sense of that. So I mean, let's try and talk a little bit about your experience on the sort of inside of then. So the last we sort of saw of you before today really was the old video of you with your wonderful and beautiful dog, who I can't wait to meet at some point in the future. I have my own Alsatian, who I love very, very much, my own German Shepherd. And yeah, basically in the car with these idiots trying to break in and then taking you away. I mean, what happened from there? Because obviously Bobby takes the camera off you, turns it off, so there's nothing else on the record from your end, which I'm fairly sure is illegal, to be honest. As far as I'm concerned, you should be able to record anything that's happening to you.
Yeah.
If they're willing to flip that on your person, then you should be able to make a record of that. So, I mean, what happened from there then?
I mean, just a bit more background just before we go to that, because just to clarify, what they were dealing with was the team that I was just talking about that wrote all that stuff down, the local health team. They had contacted, and I told the local psychiatrist to piss off. I said, look, there's nothing wrong with you anymore, apart from when you lot contact me, and I'm absolutely appalled that the police have contacted you instead of the police going and doing their job for me going into the police station. So I told the psychiatrist to do one. I did flip my shit at her. I put my hands up, I did, because she asked me, well, what do you do if he resisted arrest? No, so I didn't flip my shit at her for that. She annoyed me by saying, what would you do if he resisted arrest? And I just had a vision of all the violent incidences we see online about, you're resisting arrest. It's always a violent incident.
Yeah.
And I just said to her, I'd pin him to the floor. So, I put my hands up, and I did say that, but in a sense of self-defense, not a case of that's how I would arrest him. And she didn't ask me, how are you going to arrest him? She just asked that very provocative question. So that was one of the flashpoints. But I ended that phone call because that then led me into saying, well, hold on a minute, Doc, you're questioning me. But how can you be calling yourself a doctor if you give people pills that cause suicide? I said, now, please answer yes or no. Do your pills that you prescribe cause harm to people via potential known effects, not side effects, known effects of suicidal thoughts? And she went silent. She wouldn't answer. And I said, Doc, answer that question, please. Yes or no. Do they cause suicidal thoughts? And she said, well, yes, they do cause suicidal thoughts in young people. And I said, you can't call yourself a doctor to me then. Sorry, you can't, because you're breaking your oath. Your very first part of your oath is to not cause harm to people. And you're admitting there that a known effect, not a side effect, a known effect of prescribing that medication is suicidal thoughts. So you're not a doctor to me, to piss off. Because the balls to tell a psychiatrist that she's not a psychiatrist, or she's not a valid doctor, she's not providing healing. And yeah, she did ask a very provocative question, which I admit I did answer in a stupid way. But if I'd have been on record recording the phone call, or if she'd been out in person to sit here quietly with the police, to ask that, as they should have done, they should have come to the house with the police from that moment instead of that phone call. It could have all been dealt with in a very, very different way. So that's how they've escalated from them sending the people out. It wasn't entertaining because they were just doctors. If they were with the police, I'd have really entertained them as being serious. So yeah, the escalation from the CPN, the little nurse guy that said, do feel free to come back. Just contact us first. That's all we were pissed off about. It's because I was in the dressing gown the first time, and probably the second time as well. Either way, not prepared, because they came knocking on the door instead of ringing us first. So that's all we were asking for as a family, was for them to contact us first. So it escalated from that to a police helicopter over the house when I got back.
Really?
Yeah. I think, as far as I could say, unless I was imagining things, unless I'm totally in grandiose delusions, but as far as I know, there was a helicopter over the house. There was 3 or 4 police cars, about 6 or 7 police, 2 mental health people, a dog handler. And so, yeah, from when they just chased me down the road anyway, straight away and picked me up. From there, got took to the Mary Seacole House and searched and took into the great care of the people there. And on that evening, we had, from that point onwards, there was no contact then, no physical contact or sight of my family. In fact, I was due to go and pick my wife up from work when they kidnapped me. But throughout the whole thing, there's a complete lack of actual care and compassion from the system to ask any questions of how is this going to affect you now? Is there anything you need to go and do? You know, are your children looked after, etc., etc. All of that has just gone completely out the window. And there seems to be amongst a lot of these people running this pickup service of the courts and of the mental health service, they just got a complete blinkered wall around them, and then you try and gain eye contact with them. I'm sure you probably saw in the video, guy was just looking left and right. He couldn't maintain.
Look anywhere but at you.
Yeah, he really couldn't keep eye contact. I was thinking, yeah, that's the first problem of mental health problems.
Know that what they're doing isn't right.
Yeah,
you can see it in the fleeting bits of eye contact that they make. They know in their heart that what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah,
but I think a lot of them are just scared about, like, if I don't do my job, I don't get paid, and how do I look after my kids and my my wife, and does the mortgage get paid? And yeah, it's that fear that's that keeps them from standing up, from being able to stand in their own power and go, no, this is actually wrong. And they did have that opportunity, and bless, even one of our next door neighbours was walking by. I mean, it was like on a country lane of all places. They were walking by, and I called out to them, and he stops and he's like, "What are you doing? He's a nice guy. He's a man of peace. What are you doing?" And so what actually happened, as far as we're guessing at the moment, we still don't know because we still haven't had the medical records through, but we will obviously investigate all this properly and lawfully. As far as we're aware, there was 2 health professionals at the back of the car, whilst you saw everyone on the video at the front of the car, just the police. And that whilst they were lying, saying, "Oh, we just want to talk to you," well, if they want to just talk, they could have come to the window. But it was there and then, as far as I know, or before they even came out to the house, that they already decided to section me. So they were blatantly lying when they were pulling on the window. "Oh, we just want to talk to you." They were blatantly lying. I could feel it deep in my heart that they were lying. They just wanted to take me away. And what that was the first experience of, like, well, we've got you for 28 days now. You're under Section 2, so we've got you for assessment for 28 days. So you're going to have to just get over it. We can hold you up to 28 days. And so blasé, because they're doing it all day, every day. It's like a conveyor belt. So as soon as I was out of that place, within 3 or 4 hours, there'd been another person in that cell. It's literally a conveyor belt of people going through those places in Birmingham, being sectioned for. That's crazy. You're not fucking crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Pardon my language, but
yeah. I mean, there's 750,000 people in Birmingham on antidepressant prescriptions. So that's the people that are willing to go to the doctors and then willing to take those horrible fucking pills. So how many people are actually depressed in this city alone? Yeah, that itself, as you say, that's the craziness here. It's certainly not you or I, brother. It's that system that's creating that amount of depression and sadness, and they don't understand someone that's happy. So when I was on my good, happy days in that place, and I've got the CD player going, or I've got my guitar going and dancing around, or one of the other guys had his YouTube because I didn't have access to my phone, but he had access to YouTube. So we were playing old school rave music and we were raving, A lot of the people are not used to seeing happy people in there. Half the staff loved it and were dancing with us. It was proper awesome. But the other half of the staff were like, what's going on here? They're happy. It's it's something that's missing in a lot of people's lives. It's a shame. It's a pleasure to be able to infect that place with love and laughter and dance and music. But it's a shame to have to do it in that way, and it's a shame that they're not already doing it in the ways that we can do. And one of the big experiences straight away as well was the timetable on the wall, completely blank because of COVID. Those buzzwords, everyone, because of COVID, needs to be despelled from our vocabulary. But because of COVID, everything's been cancelled in that place. So you had a choice of playing pool, maybe if the staff had time to go down and take us to another place to play pool before we were put in lockdown, or I was put in lockdown, or going to the gym. And there's only 4 little machines in the gym for 38 or 39 beds in that place. So yeah, to see from one thing to the next to the next to the next, I was trying to balance out the amount of things I was having to pull them up on their practices. I mean, firstly, there was no toilet seat for me. That was disgusting from day one. For the whole time there, didn't have a toilet seat. Funny. You got to laugh at these things. All the food there is cooked and then heated up or kept warm in aluminium trays. So it's just permanently leaching the Alzheimer's and dementia and mental health problems straight into all the food, including the vegan food. So there's no point in ordering vegan food. So I just had cold food brought in from home to eat. I did have a bit of their food because I was just starving hungry at times and wanting a hot meal. But I could sense, I could taste the metallic nature of the food. But yeah, to the water, I said, what water do you have? Have you got a filter on the go? What about your boiled water? And it is filtered, but they said to me, well, the filter was cleaned out last week. I thought, oh, great. And I said, yeah, it's right full of loads of crap. I thought, oh, not great, but at least it's been cleaned the week before I've gone in there. Yeah. So, to have semi-filtered water, I thought that's better than just pure tap water, at least. Let's look at the positives. The shower wasn't filtered, and that smelled really metallic. It'd be beautiful to take a water sample from these places and actually look at the energy of the water, the structure of it, and how clean it is from wherever the water's coming from in a lot of these places. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's not a healing environment whatsoever. No. And there are positives there. There are some very conscious staff. They're all the ones of faith. However, those not of any particular faith or any connection to God or spiritual context of life have just got that big blindfold over them, and it's that starry-eyed fear instead of that chilled, yo, I see you, I feel you. It's that, I don't dare look at you, I don't dare feel you, I might hurt myself emotionally. Yeah, but everyone's scared to open their emotional body, and it's that's the, I suppose, the big blockage at the moment within our world are the other people in this world that are being in that fear still. So I think the only way to deal with it is through absolute love and holding those to account at the very top of the tree. So we're not dealing too much with the bottom feeders. We're going to the top of the tree as much as possible.
Well, and you want to get to the people that have done what they've done in at least a reasonable level of cognition of why it's being done. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because there's going to be so many people, and I've said this before in other videos. I said it in my interview with Henna. There's going to come a point when people are going to become fully aware of the damage they have caused by being part of this system to the whole world, and that is going to be an experience that's going to be utterly devastating for them. They will be experienced a level of remorse that is hard for. Well, I mean, I suppose me and you have experienced our own levels of remorse when we had that awakening and realised what we've been part of and what we've been promoting and what we've been, at the very least, silently obedient to or have just ignored. I mean, I still feel regret that I wasn't doing what I'm doing now 5 years ago. I was selfish. I'd just got a job that I really enjoyed, that I loved with all my heart and all my soul, and it was going good. And I didn't want to take the risk that people would start to see me being overtly political and decide they didn't want their kids to learn how to swim from me.
Yeah.
And that fear put me in a place where I felt like I had to guard myself against that, and I had to beat around the bush rather than going for the throat, so to speak. Does that make sense? Like, and just being brutally honest where being brutally honest was necessary, and stop pulling my punches. Hit this thing with every ounce of my being and every ounce of my effort, and not only that, but build something better to replace it.
I totally empathise because, I worked went self-employed for when I ran the BMX track, and, stepping into politics, shouting about plant medicines whilst contracted to the city council. You can imagine the city council thinking, my God, this man's delivering lessons to toddlers, which it was. Very successful lessons. And the first BMX birthday parties to be done in Birmingham, helped set up the first track inductions in the country for a BMX track with huge jumps to be done professionally and safely. So I was in a place of responsibility, and I rose to those responsibilities all the time, as we do. And this is part of my journey as well, is to show that if we do smoke weed and cannabis, and we do take plant medicines, we can be ultra intelligent and ultra talented and even better at what we do. In fact, I'd say that some of the best BMX track builders in the world all smoke weed, and all the best artists in the world all smoke weed. It's part of culture.
I mean, it's a cool thing. I love Bill Hicks's take on this, where he says, if you think drugs haven't done anything positive for you, go home, take all your greatest albums and burn them. Because I'm telling you what, the guys who wrote that and the girls who wrote that, they were high as all hell. You better believe it. All the greatest music has been done in a place of, tapping into that divine consciousness. And, I do believe there is something divine about cannabis in itself. Like, it's got that, there's something divine about the connection that it gives you. And I've noticed this because you can, if you've smoked it, you can always tell somebody else who has. And when I say smoked it, I don't mean had a couple of puffs at a party. I mean, like, you've, smoked it regularly for a while. When you meet somebody, you just know. You just know if they have, because they've got a certain outlook about life that comes with that, and it facilitates that awakening within a person.
Yeah, it changes our receiver. So for like a radio receiving, and our certain channels have been worked a lot and opened a lot. And if you worked a lot on that channel of cannabis, Mary Jane, of the sacred flower, then we just acknowledge that straight away with another person, because you just feel that resonance of that channel being opened. Like,
you've come to that space with that energy. And one of the spiritual teachers I've told about, I've followed over the years, likes to talk about it setting up a frequency, a resonance within you, that once you've done it, even if you stop, it will always be accessible to you. It will always be there, because you've taken that into your being and you've embodied that way of perceiving the world as part of you. And it will always be there then. It never goes away.
Yeah, and that's part of the experience I've just been through, was to put that into practice and know that, and to totally believe in it and do it, to literally release the spirits within that mental health hospital of all the plant teachers that I've worked with, and all the plant molecules and extracts that I've worked with, all the spaces of healing, all the healing springs, all the mountains, all the trees, all the animals, all the people, all the music, everything that I've ever channeled and open that channel too within myself, including Christ, Shiva, Kali, all Ganesha, all the high entities and beings that I feel, know, I've experienced, to call upon those beings and the ancestors to be there and channel through me, and it worked. I even said to the doctor and the junior doctor, I placed my guitar down on the table. I said, especially with 432 hertz musical instruments, I thank God I was allowed my guitar and instruments in there. I said, with the right, even just sang note from the heart.
Yeah.
I says I can tune into what I've tuned into over the years because I've opened that so much, and because of the divine job, whatever it was, done through us all in this scenario of me going into the place there. I could really feel that those plant teachers and the frequencies were opening up within me. Especially MDMA from raving with the guy, with a couple of the people there, and LSD as well. My vision, shamanic vision, just normal eyesight changed in there. I was almost like I was on a permanent mushroom trip. But they can guarantee I was on absolutely nothing. I was on clean, completely nothing. So it was literally like experiencing a shamanic trip for half of that journey in there.
Wow. Well, I mean, I firmly believe that there's definitely a growing movement of acceptance and public, a lot of people in high up jobs have been getting more willing to be open about their use of psychedelics, not only LSD, mushrooms, but also cannabis, because that's technically a psychedelic as well. It's in the alteration of perception. So as much as you don't get the the strong visual and auditory hallucinations unless you extraordinarily tap into it. I have met a few people who've less experienced with the flower, shall we say, who've described what you'd say as visual or auditory hallucinations. Not anything I've experienced myself, but a growing group of professionals. I mean, you've had the CLEAR group, CLEAR, Cannabis Law Reform Group. We've been lobbying for a long time, and I remember seeing there was a group of professionals who were talking quite openly about the use of other psychedelics like mushrooms and LSD. I mean, famously, the two scientists who came up with the model of DNA were experimenting with microdosing LSD during a lot of that time. And, speaking from personal experience, I think it's tools like that are very good at improving your abstract thinking and dealing with concepts that are normally beyond rational thought.
Well, do you know where Francis Crick, the guy that was named as the main guy for getting the information on DNA, do you know his full story that he said?
No, go on. Please tell me.
In his LSD trips, he was contacted by beings that explained that they spread certain molecules and data across the universe through transpermia, I think it was the name they called it. And that's how the building blocks of life came to this space and were embedded within certain psychedelics. So basically he's saying that aliens contacted him through an LSD trip and then showed him the double helix molecule and explained everything else about genetics and anything else that he'd have wanted to know at that time. So,
wow.
But that's what we read on the internet. That could be a made-up story. Let's see if anyone out there could find out whether it's definitely Francis Crick's story. But from what I've experienced these things, I don't doubt that in one bit. Yeah,
I think there are methods as well of accessing that sort of space that I call it. It's like your own mental. Your own mental gym or your own mental lab where you can start to experiment with things in your mind and start to physically create actual models of things that you can walk around and look inside of and run and experience. Tesla talked about it, and famously, a lot of his inventions he actually built in his brain, in his mind, and prototyped them. So the motors that we use, the generators that we use, the first prototype he ever built of them, he built in his head. He didn't actually build it in three-dimensional physical reality. He built it in the reality of his mind. And Einstein famously, when he was coming up with his ideas of relativity and how there's no such thing as absolute motion, everything is only moving relative to everything else in the universe, he imagined himself as actually riding on a beam of light. And that was how he came up with these ideas that eventually started to put into mathematics. And I can quite get on board with a lot of that because I've got a quite mathematical mind, but I don't work in numbers. I work in models. Does that make sense? I visualize a lot of what I understand, and it's not necessarily easy to put into words, but I can see it in my head, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think like your psychedelics and your hallucinogens and your entheogens, whatever word you want to use to describe these sacred molecules, help to bring you into that space where you can think in ways that are not, you call it non-traditional consciousness, don't you? That's the sort of holistic word for it. I mean, Bill Hicks said, I really liked it. It only this modern society only values two chemicals in the world, and one is caffeine, which keeps you pepped enough to be productive, and the other one is alcohol, which keeps you passive enough to accept your slavery.
Yeah, it's very true. It's as soon as we pick up the different tools, we have a mind open. There's a great song by Hallucinogen, Trans Techno, LSD. It's got a quote. I can't remember the name of the guy the quote's from, but it's saying, with the advent of acid, we've discovered new ways to think, and it's about piecing together new thoughts in your mind. And what is it about acid that scares people so deeply? It's because there's doors that they're afraid to go in, and they don't want us to go in there either, because if we go in, we'll learn something that they don't know, and that makes us a little out of their control.
Yeah.
And that was one of the big themes I've picked up in the recent scenario, was the God complex of certain doctors, that seeking control over people's lives, or being a nurse and being so, the doctor hasn't seen you today. No, yeah, that's right. They won't see you for a week now either. Without any, it's like, what? They're just so used to, bless them, it's not their fault, obviously they're all victims, but they're just so used to that program of people being potentially in that one place. But otherwise, I thought, this must be a temporary place. They can't keep people here for months, surely. My next door neighbour had been there for 2 months.
Wow.
Like, what? And one tiny little triangle of grass and one slug-eaten laurel bush. It's terrible to think of what the poor guys are still going through in that place. It's a real eye opener of what we must all now do to be able to help those places, those people. And there is a shift coming. We all know it, and I feel that we can.
It's already happening.
Yeah, and the old guard has got to go. So those God complex, drug pushing doctors, that's all they know, and that's all they had on offer, literally. Especially once they put me into lockdown because I refused the swab test. So they put me in isolation for 8 days, and literally the only thing they'd have offered to help me would have been drugs. That was it. But that guard of doctors is being replaced by a new sweep of junior doctors and trainee doctors that are fresh-hearted, eager, open eyes, not in a fearful open eyes way, open eyes of ready and willing to learn. And check this, guys. One of the junior doctors was a doctor that had been over to Peru to study.
Oh, really?
To study ayahuasca and to see whether it was ayahuasca, whether it was the retreat, whether it was the food, whether it was the shaman, what how are these people going there and getting better? And he's very interested in psilocybin and ketamine and LSD. And there's also some trainee doctors there, and freshly faced straight out of university, and they were in one of the meetings with me. And they came to me afterwards with their notepads and said, "Do you mind if we have a chat to you?" And I was like, "Yeah, no problem. Let's go for it. Come on." So we sat there for at least an hour. I was imparting all my information possible into these guys to help spread that seed, and to have that spoken in that space for the energies and everything to be just in that total energy of the Christ light and Mother Earth energy. To be really just having to hold myself, not even be able to breathe for a minute. I didn't want to open myself in that way at all because of the energy in that place. I literally had to keep myself like a monk pretty much the whole time. And I didn't cry for the first week, really, because I was just trying to keep myself so guarded in my own space. Yeah, I suppose it's for all of our emotional releases and emotional work. We need to set space and be confident in the space we're in to be able to open our emotional body up. Which is why a lot of men probably don't cry, because intuitively they're not feeling secure, maybe, to actually hold space for themselves, or anyone else around them to hold space for them to be able to cry.
Yeah, well, there's been an attack on the sacred genders for a long while, in terms of they've tried to remove a lot of the emotions from men, and they're made to believe that they can't have an emotional bond with anybody and can't express those emotions, and have to pretend that they don't exist. And they've tried to take away the sacred role of women in the home and women in society by destroying their trust in men and destroying men's trust in women. And there's been a sort of general attack on the balance of masculinity and femininity, to the point where they're almost sort of denying that either thing even exists anymore, which is preposterous, because masculine and feminine principles are very obviously present in nature. You can't get away from that.
Yeah, it's like the suppression of human nature, the suppression of very spirit itself, really. That's what the dark side permeating through those people running these places and running the systems of bullshit in the world. That's what it's looking at, is the total suppression of the emotional body. Which is why, for one reason, I felt I needed to be there. Now looking at it afterwards, is to open that emotional body, because when I did start to cry, I felt all the Christ energy I've ever felt from ceremonies and my work within that field come through to me. And I felt an absolute lift, literally, into a different level of my own space and my own ancestral healing as well. So there was a lot of work that went on with my grandparents, my father, and all my grandparents, really. So yeah, it was a beautiful, beautiful process of my own self-healing, balancing also. I could feel how it's helping others help with their healing and the information I was giving to the patients. But yeah, with as far as the crying and the suppression of that emotional body, that some of the nurses actually said to me, the symptoms that we don't want to have out of people, they need to be suppressed. And from our paradigm, I was like, "What? Sorry, sister, say again. What?" And he says, we don't want those things to come out. I was like, "Well, that's like keeping it under the carpet and going, yeah, it's all right, we'll be fine, don't worry about it." So yeah, they're treating symptoms, but they're not actually treating symptoms. They're not even treating symptoms. They're just suppressing them. So it's even worse than what I'm saying. Oh, they only treat symptoms, but they don't. They're just suppressing them. This is going to get worse.
Yeah, no, you're right. Purges are important, right?
Yeah, so we need to bring that out and then hold space for that person to go through that purge.
We even have a word for it. It's called catharsis.
Yeah. And I even said, I said this to the deputy ward manager. I says, "Brother, look," I says, because he saw me go through my pendulum swings and ups and down the ropes. He'd observed it all. And I says, bro, you saw me this morning really pissed off and depressed. I says, now look at me, I'm all happy, yeah? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, see, I told you, I can heal myself and you don't need to give me any of those nasty drugs, did you, bro? And he's like, no. And I was like, aha, would you like to know how? And then I explained about a cathartic load of tears of redemption and then a good freaking dance to one of my old CDs.
Mm-hmm.
And in that place of pure isolation, not even allowed out the room, with just a grilled window, a solid grilled window, can't even put your finger out of it. I managed to move that energy, and it was a beautiful process, I feel, of going in there to be able to show those guys that you can heal yourself. Yeah. You really can, even from that place of tormented desperation. You can imagine how I was trying to hold my shit together and not flip out on them, because I couldn't flip out on them at all, because that would have meant they'd force drugged me without a doubt. And that was the last thing I wanted to go into my body was the drugs. That was the main fear, I suppose, of the ordeal. And I actually felt the energy of the forced medications, or just the misguided medications, because people in there don't realise they could say no if they wanted to. And they're just thinking they're going wrong. Well, I just thought it was good for the best. So it's misguided medication of people with what, lithium? Isn't it ironic that the universe throws up on our Facebook lithium batteries are outperformed by hemp batteries? It's the same thing as the human body. I think these doctors, the ones that are still pushing the lithium instead of looking at nature, it's time for them to listen up to nature, because if they don't, they're just going to be out of that job and they won't be in that service in any way, shape or form for other people because of the harm that they've done. And as you said, their cathartic process is going to be huge. The tears, I said to the doctors, or I said to them all, I said, you guys, if you've been prescribing what you've been prescribing, especially from this moment forth, you're going to cry buckets of tears, years and years and years of tears. And it's going to be beautiful. And I'm more than happy to hold space for you. Just give me a call when you want me back. Yeah. And that's how I left it with
you've offered them your healing services while they're trying and failing to heal you under their methods.
Yeah. And their symptoms, we actually listened back to one of the phone calls that their wifey recorded. They didn't know it was recorded until halfway through, because Kate was in a rush. And it caught them out on their assessment of me to be 20 minutes on the first night, 20 minutes on the second day, and then a whole week later, nothing, with a psychologist. And they kept me in there all that time on that amount of lack of assessment. But the level of bullshittery there was crazy, because the doctor actually said, well, the symptoms he's presenting. But earlier on in the call, the only symptoms she said about, I can't release the phone call because she said this can't go on the internet, but I can obviously describe what the call was about. But yeah, she said that he's talking a lot about conspiracies. And that was she actually referred to that as a symptom of what was wrong. As a symptom of what was wrong with me. And the only thing,
the critical mind is now a symptom of
mental health. Yeah, to be able to ask questions of our government, like tax supporting Israel, and that's the only angle I was coming from, was tax supports Israel. And I've got a letter to prove it from the government, so that's supporting war. So that is a conspiracy theory. Is a grandiose delusion, according to these doctors, and a conspiracy theory. And the only thing he had on offer to get rid of these symptoms was drugs.
Right.
So that is my shamanic assessment of the NHS mental health, and they've failed at the moment with the current guard. But when the new guard get fully in control of the helm, they're the ones that are willing to work with the plant medicines, and it's all going to be freaking beautiful. And we do need those places to secure the nutters, because there are a lot of nutters in the world. They're just the ones running those places at the moment. And they've got to realise that they need help themselves. And that was the last thing offered to the doctor. Says, well, doc, She says, well, if you ever need any help, you know where we are. And I says, well, I know full well that you're going to contact me back and go, yo, you know what? We need that hairy hippie back here to teach us how to use frankincense oil properly and start using musical instruments and start working with sacred frequencies and turn the freaking Wi-Fi off, even though the place is made out of lead. You know, you can't get any normal mobile phone signal in the place, which was a nightmare for me because of lack of communication when I was in the isolation after the first week or so, full lockdown. I couldn't have a phone call for more than 15 minutes a day because they were worried about me having an internet phone. So I couldn't have any phone calls at all, really, apart from 2 15-minute calls a day. But yeah, they need to look at the energy in that place, and we do need those places because there's some crazy people. We all know there are crazy people, and hats off to the police for having to do what they do, because there are crazy people that would go and go after an MP. But I don't want that. And they could have actually done all this investigation from within the home. And this is part of this journey, is to highlight, as you opened up, brother, to highlight how that the police and mental health services and doctors and everyone in the community need to work together and actually establish who's a safe person or not, So we can very quickly vouch for one another. So it doesn't take 18 days, half of which in solitary confinement, which would drive any normal person fucking insane.
Yeah.
It nearly broke me. It really did. And I took every ounce of power and help from everyone in the world holding space for me to be able to not lose my shit and get out of there. But, to look at that and go, what are we doing? And one of the first things, I was going to look through my notes, but we'll do that on another call. There was a letter, saying they're entitled to give you electric convulsion treatment. So they're allowed to electrocute your brain. I thought, holy shit, are they still doing that in 2020?
They are. They are.
Wow, man. I mean, the fear of that alone, you can imagine that, you got the risk of something going, I don't know, you always have those paranoid thoughts, I suppose, in that sort of place, in that scenario, because of the things that have gone on in the past. In those places, you feel the energy, but you can imagine the scenarios that you had to quickly go, nope, reject within the thought patterns and align to good outcome. And say a lot of ho'oponopono and every healing technique I could imagine, permanently all the time, really. Keep myself in high spirits in that place. But I'll get the list together of all the things that I did in there, and we'll share that online. Look forward to doing a lot more talks of how we can, breathe our way through the deepest of horrible moments in our life. We can just use cosmic breath to pull ourselves out of anything, a little bit of singing. So even if we're naked in the middle of nowhere, breathing
that's it
and
well,
singing.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
This is time for like the strong beings of the world to really start standing up, isn't it? Because as you've shown yourself, when you start making waves, then they start doing things to try and break you, and without trying to scare anybody off, you've got to be prepared to make sacrifices with a lot of this stuff, because this is a spiritual war. This is a spiritual war that's going on right now, and we're all a part of it, whether we like it or not. And you're either watching it go on, or you're joining the side of the light, because we're going to win. We are going to win, because the light always wins over the darkness. It always does. That's the way the universe works. But it happens faster the more of us that stand up, right? The more of us that are willing to actually take direct action, and whatever it is that you can do. We all have different skills. We don't all have the skills and the strength to go actually walking into a police station and challenge someone verbally, but whether you're like me, an educator who's literally just trying to find the solution and teach people how to enact it, or whether you're a healer, whether you're a musician, if you're a musician, write music about it that we can share with each other. If whatever you can do, you need to start doing.
Yeah, we've all got a calling.
It's minor, because nothing is minor.
Yeah, yeah, we've all got a calling, and as you say, if everyone steps into their calling, then the whole world will change, because it's just a matter of choosing between love and fear in every one moment. So if in the next 24 hours of everyone's moments, everyone chose love, the world would just change instantly. You know, it's we've got a lot of hypnotism to lift,
Yes.
a lot of
And
trickery that's been
generational indoctrination. Generational indoctrination.
Yeah, as I said about, healing from within that place was truly ancestral.
Yeah.
As ancestral as going to Peru. In fact, I'd say that out of all my shamanic experiences with the plant medicines of real high doses, etc., the biggest shamanic experience of my life has been going into the mental home and having no medicine whatsoever.
That's very interesting. That is very, very interesting.
Although I am tied to the Shipibo tribe. So the Shipibos over in Peru did hold ceremonies focusing upon myself with ayahuasca. So that does obviously open up a huge channel of energy, which is part of the reason why I was there, and the quantum entanglement as well with the doctors, etc., that have been in ayahuasca's energy, and everybody that has been in the energy of ayahuasca, and the master plant teachers from Africa, from Australia, from all the sacred lands of Mother Earth. They're all carrying that frequency around, being in the right place at the right moment, channeling to each other the love, helping support each other in the circles that we've all formed now in this beautiful world. And that work is holding the pillars of that truth and the light of God to win, without a doubt. Now, the people that may be not doing the work upon themselves, are they just making it slower for us? Or is there a pivotal point where we can split into our own separate timelines to finish out our own scenarios? If that happens, good luck to everyone that's not doing any work on themselves. Start working on yourself if that is the case. If, however, we are a collective and we go through this as a collective,
variations of how this plays out, isn't there? Ultimately,
it's for each individual, and maybe we do have to work as a collective. So if it's the same message for everyone, we've got to all start surrendering to even deeper and deeper and deeper healing. And even if we think we've all healed our shit, there's still more healing to go. Because when we're looking out that window, there's still a nasty ass reflection looking back.
There's an old saying, isn't there? The man who thinks he knows everything knows nothing.
Yeah.
And the man who knows everything realizes he knows nothing.
Yeah, probably. And we can add on to that, the person that says they healed themselves is not healed enough.
That's it. I'm quite knowledgeable about a lot of what's going on, and I'm smart enough to know that I don't know anything really in the grand scheme of things. Yeah. And only the truly smart people realize that they can't know everything, and only the truly healed people realize they can't ever heal everything either.
Yeah. And certain aspects of this do have to be, left up to the Almighty, be that Mother Earth, be that Father Source, however we see that, energy of the divine coming from those divine aspects of what we see out in spirit.
But, well, it stands above everything, doesn't it? The divine and the sacred. If the divine and the sacred decides you're going to be struck by a bolt of lightning, then that is just what's going to happen. And there's sweet FA you can do about that, right?
Yeah, it'd be great to actually survive a lightning strike, though, because you have amazing tattoos. And if you've seen the effect of fractal, I've always looked at it and thought, I'd actually like to be struck by lightning and survive it. It'd be like, look at this, man. But, but that'd be a tale.
Tree of life tattooed on your arm.
yeah, get it tattooed up as well to add effect to it. But, it's there is the future going forwards of the solutions, just feeding back into the summary of what we've discussed. And within those places that, we can offer all the solutions. And even in those places, those little places, which will only be for temporary housing of people that are dangerous, I suppose, in this transition, however this plays out. But we've just got to have people in those positions that really care, that truly care. Yeah. And that's all we need. It's all we need. It's not hard. And it's not hard to identify the people that don't give a shit as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, like that's the big thing now, isn't it? It's demonstrating a structure that is divine in nature that people can recognize as being a way that we can all work together to sort this planet out and collectively manage the resources that are shared. The
Yeah,
moment we have that, then we offer anybody in a position in the current system, would you like to be part of the thing that's going to replace this? Would you like, instead of being subject to this government, would you like to work with the real people? And if you work with the real people, we'll just take over that hospital. We'll just do it.
yeah, yeah. Because you said the same words as the guys I speak to in Peru. They says, well, there might be a time where we'll just walk into that mental home, and it won't even be sort of taking over it. They'll just be expecting us, and we'll all be arranged, and they'll just say, "Yep, okay, it's time for the change." And
Yeah.
then the true administrators that can manage resources of true healing, and the true managers of people that know how to truly heal, the true people will run these things for all the people, not for profit, and it'll all work. And yeah, we will get back to these places, and the smoke alarms will be took off the roof, and there'll be frankincense going left, right, and centre, and people lifted out of psychosis using music. I mean, one of the things I witnessed in there was a patient was triggered by a song that we played. I won't say by which rock band, but a rock band was played, and because of where it was filmed and other reasons I read on that YouTube video, it triggered a psychosis in one of the other patients, and they went into full schizo craziness, running up and down the ward. And it was definitely the song that did it. And I think the staff gave the guy an antipsychotic injection, but as he carried on running up and down in his psychosis, I played the flute, which pulled him into the room, and he knelt straight on the floor in front of me. And I swapped from playing the ocarina flute to the didgeridoo and rattle, and it felt exactly like a shamanic ceremony where you're transmuting the energy that's presented itself. And that
music is a very powerful thing, isn't it? It's a very, very powerful thing.
Yeah. And
I'm certain I would not have got through the darker portions of my life were it not for my musical outlets.
Yeah. The transmutation is
of that deep funk, like putting on a good rock band that I like and just cathartically letting out all that negativity and getting it out of my system, getting it out into the world, and then going, oh, right, now I feel better.
Yeah, there's lots of ways of, the music can be for release or for soothing as well. I suppose straight away you can use one song for release and then others for soothing.
For sure.
I suppose that's the same thing with going from a flute to a didgeridoo and rattle. It's the spirit guiding the different instruments or whatever's available at the moment to move that energy, and that's where eventually, in a very short space of time, prayers be, the new doctors will get up to speed, I suppose, with the spiritual aspects of healing, because it's been denied by science for so long. But before too long, there will be video evidence of extrasensory perception and real telekinesis and teleportation magic coming from relatively normal people,
like that anyway, isn't it?
I think there is,
militaries have been investigating stuff like that. There's been remote viewing that was used by the American military as a method of remotely spying on people, and there's all sorts of stuff that was investigated and lots of money pumped into it. Which very, very quickly disappeared off the radar and was never talked about again, but it's still being practiced.
Well, that's what we need to do, is uncover all these secret practices. Even magicians, the magicians of the world need to share their secrets, I feel. Especially given this time in the world, that if we keep a secret, it is negative consciousness, because it's not sharing. Sharing is caring. And there's Dynamo, the magician Dynamo. I'd love to help him heal himself, if I could. But for one of his magic tricks, he produced a bucket full of fish that just continued piling out fish for the tribe he was performing for, and it felt like food for them. But when we really look at what he could have produced from that bucket, could have been beautiful organic fruit and vegetables, and paper or hemp packaged seeds and nuts. Could have been a bounty of real, organic beauty, whereas it was blood and guts, really. We can look at the polarity of maybe his work there, that if and when he heals himself deeper, the energies and the magic that he's tapping into will be able to produce more beautiful flowers and beautiful magic. And the reason I bring that up was for the reason of the secrecy, because, and especially with the fish as well, that if we teach a man to fish, he'll always eat for life, as the saying goes. I don't agree with eating fish. Or just give a man a fish, he'll fish for a day. Now with Dynamo there, because he's not sharing his magic tricks of how to do the magic.
Yeah,
he's literally only given a fish for a day, a bucket load of fish when it could have been a bucket load of fruit. And he's not, well, as far as I was aware, he's not teaching those people how to repeat that magic.
Yeah.
And that's, like I said earlier, that as we embrace these tools of shamanic power, we start to begin to see how these magicians work and what energies they're working with and what channels and frequencies they're tuning into, geniuses or genies, or whatever beings or frequencies or channels that are out there. But could it well be that, with the sharing of these secrets and then the open healing and even discussions about this level of the magicians in the world, that we can then all embrace these magical tricks well, it's not even tricks, it's the magic of life. That's what the magician is really using, is the life, the magic of life itself, as being connected to spirit. Is that how we should be as a people, all of us, in that telepathic frequency? Is that what's coming to us? Is that why we're going through this time of turbulence? That we could evolve our DNA, or have our DNA evolved in such a way so fast that we're going to all be in a space of being that more powerful being that we can experience through in theogenic experiences, or even just day-to-day consciousness, hitting the right moment with the right song, or even just the right moment of frustration or whatever else is a trigger for the endogenous DMT to be released. It's that where we're all heading to be godlike, as walking around where we're permanently pumping out. And that's, I suppose, the real core of my research over all of this. It's gone to the God molecule, to the spirit molecule, dimethyltryptamine. Is that the absolute, the real key to all this still? It's
That's naturally produced in your brain anyway, isn't it? And
yeah,
the theory is that you can train yourself to produce it on demand if you attain that level of personal mastery. Then you can release mass amounts of DMT on demand.
Yeah, I feel that the more I'm walking the path of the shaman, that I'm permanently producing that now. The way I view everything, and how my vision is. I'm sure you probably recognise that within yourself as well. But I feel the biggest producer of it is from the heart and the lungs, and the pineal is then the astral connection, but the pure soul heart connection is the absolute core. To connect into pure spirit. The brain and the heart
are intimately linked anyway, and there's an argument to be had that there's a lot of actual, and I'm talking like scientifically recognizable thinking that goes on in the heart, because as I understand it, it's the only place other than the brain where there is a very high density of neurons, nervous tissue, basically, and it's the second highest density of nervous tissue in the whole body, besides the brain itself. And the arguments to be had there that there is actual cognitive processes that occur in the heart rather than just in the brain, and that's where this sort of well, your emotions all come from your gut, don't they? They come from here. This is where you feel them, in the sort of center of your chest, in that solar plexus heart space. Or this is where you feel that deep fear when something, potentially threatening is happening to you. It's here. It's not head space, it's heart space, right?
Yeah, the home is where the heart is, and I feel the Egyptian and the Tibetan Book of the Dead was wrong to say the seat of the soul being the pineal gland. I definitely feel it's the heart, and as you say, it produces the neurons. They go up and down the spine to the back and
I
forth.
think the pineal's the antenna.
Yeah, it's one of the antenna, and as you say, the gut instinct, and that's connected to Mother Earth, and then all the animal spirits and everything of an earthly plane, and that's coming up through the roots, through the gut, to the heart. And once centered in the heart, then we can then utilize our communication to this realm through the throat, and then through the physical eyes to scan this space. Obviously, the first eye being the heart, and that's the first thing to be produced out of the 3 vision centers in the womb. Then your physical eyes develop, second in the womb. So I view that as the second eyes to scan the physical plane that we're in this moment. And then once we go to the third eye, we're then going to the next realm of vision behind closed eyelids. We're then using the pineal and the crown to connect to either the astral plane or to the source plane. And being a source player when we get to that source level. And
well, you're right. There's definitely these fundamentally, and there's 2 of them that combine to form source energy, as far as I can understand. And you see this idea in the yin yang, the Tao, and in many other sort of ideas of polarity and duality, is that you've got there's an ethereal masculine concept, which is what we recognize as thought, because there's no real evidence that thoughts actually happen in the brain. There's some sort of reaction that happens in the matter due to those thoughts happening, but you can't directly tie one to the other. So as far as I'm concerned, thoughts are an ethereal thing that don't actually exist in the material plane. But again, emotions are the same thing. Emotions are another ethereal way of understanding the realm, and they're fundamentally different, but equal in energy, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You've got like the masculine side, which is this conscious thought, and then you've got the feminine side, which is the heart knowledge. I talk about it as knowing versus gnosis, which is that intuitive knowledge that doesn't require rationality or anything else that's tied to it. And when those 2 fundamental ethereal energies are recognized as being unified in source, that is where the sort of the true power comes from, right?
Yeah, definitely so. And the interruption in that, to bring you back to the early point about when that gets disrupted from us being a higher level being, is from the very first vaccinations and injections and cutting the cord so soon at birth, the whole birthing process, and then the whole indoctrination. It closes the body down, so that unfortunately a lot of people have a heart bypass. So if, even like the magician I mentioned earlier, from the bullying that he experienced as a child, and then the general bad food and diet and everything else that most people, we all, hands up, I did it as well. We get a certain level of toxification in the lower body and the gut, and then instead of our system being fully operational and detoxified, other things can get in the way, and it can be other people's fears or our own fears, and that system of fear blocks the flow of love, and it's like a heart bypass then, and that then steers people in the mind, and from a wound that's lower down in the energetic body. And when everybody can recognize that we've all got some form of level of wounding that needs healing on the emotional body, especially down in the reconnection to Mother Earth and from between the heart through the roots and the lower chakras. Once we align ourselves to healing all that as much as we can then look at the connections that are possible with the telepathic realm and have really good positive experiences of that. But the one of the big keys here is we can't rush our healing
No.
There's a lot of people reaching for very powerful shamanic tools, and one of the things I would agree with the people working in the mental health homes that strong cannabis, LSD, and mushrooms, etc., DMT shouldn't be for certain people. A lot of people can't handle it. They'll struggle to handle a strong frankincense session with a shaman.
Well, this is it, to each according to their needs, right?
Yeah. So
And
we need to. It's just another call to regulate it, really. It's just more argument to regulate and educate.
And that's it. And it's having the right people in the position who understand these tools and that are able to recognise. All right, maybe you're due a slightly higher than normal dose, and perhaps you will start with microdosing because I've spoken to you, I've assessed your level of consciousness. I'm aware of what you can psychologically handle in one go, right?
Yeah,
and that's the key. Yeah,
it is the key, and it's also to look and scan for any addictions. Now, before I was allowed anywhere near any plant medicines at all in Peru, I was put into no plant medicine, so access to no smoking, nothing at all, to make sure that when I went to the plants, I'd be doing so in a definite sacred way, but also to scan for any addictions. And I was really, proud when I went into the mental home to say, look, I'm not addicted to anything, am I? Can you see me shaking at all? Have I got any cravings, any signs of addictions? Because, I openly admit to smoking weed all the time. And I'm saying, I was smoking weed right up until the very last moment. And so no addictions whatsoever. So part of this journey, again, was to really show the mental health that if things are done right, in the right way, they are of benefit to people. And when done in the right dose, in the correct time, these are going to be amazing medicines for many people.
For sure. And I'll say now, like, as soon as I've been saying this for a while now, but as soon as I'm in a position where I can come to you for a sacred ceremony, communing with the the sacred plants of this land on which I was born and to which I have, my father's fathers were born. I would love to share in ceremony with you.
Yeah, man, we'll have a good session. So.
Because every great land has its sacred entheogenic plants, correct? You go to Mexico, they've got their own. You go to Peru, they've got their own. Like, everywhere in the world has some version of psychotropic chemical which is able to connect you to the great source consciousness, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a vision now of past history being before 1800s. We could have maybe had 1,000 years of peace, where we had free movement around the world, maybe through teleportation buildings, like instead of a train station, you've got like a Stargate. You can just walk through and you can see the other side in Manchester or in another country. And maybe have enjoyed free energy. And maybe we've enjoyed all the world's medicines, all the plants from around the world, and maybe lived in real peace for a long time with very basic electronic machines. I don't know, maybe a few hundred years. But I've got a feeling I do align strongly with, and I feel I'm going to say this, is John Levi, his work into the Tartarian Empire, and asking the real big questions of where all the beautiful architecture really comes from in our world, and when was it built and for what purposes, and indeed what technology is being utilized, maybe even still with the copper dome roofs, or what was that receiving? Could all these beautiful architectural places, cities around the world actually have been working from the pyramids still only a few hundred years back, and we've been falsifying everything.
That's quite interesting.
That
is quite interesting.
Yeah, I've come to the point now where the questions of reality of where we're living, especially through the channel of John Levi, there, even the theory of living in a crater on the moon. We are in 2020. I don't know if you've heard that theory yet, but if there is a crater up there that's looking like it's got the continents on it, we need to get really good telescopes on it. There's scientists out there. There's a challenge for you. I'm not into conspiracy theories. I like conspiracy, evidence. So So we need to go and find out where those people are saying the coordinates are of where we
There's
might
so
be
much
on the
out there
moon.
as well, isn't there? And there's so many question marks over how much that we've been taught. Once you realise the scale of the provable lies, the scale of the unprovable lies starts to, not seem so wacky. And there's a whole lot of stuff out there that I'm willing to consider intellectually, but not hang my hat on yet. Hang on, I've just lost you on video there for a moment, Mark.
Sorry.
Oh, there we are. We're back. We're back.
Yeah, totally.
There's so much out there which I can intellectually consider without putting my heart and soul behind it. And the sort of place that I've come to now is that we're not going to know how much we've actually been lied to until we are the ones who are running and managing our affairs for ourselves.
Yeah, I've come to that conclusion as well.
I'm not going to have any more arguments with people about the shape of the planet because
it's not worth.
We've got to get rid of the lies first, guys. Then we'll know the truth.
I mean, this is the beauty of the moon crater theory. It's thrown such a curveball at everyone because none of these theories where everyone was distracted for so long on that. And you and I were both saying, guys, it doesn't matter. Literally doesn't matter. We've got more important things to worry about.
Yeah.
It goes to show how little we know again. And this is the thing that as soon as people egotistically of the mind, not egotistically of the heart guided, but egotistically in the mind and the brain seeking their answers, leads them down a path of distraction that
doesn't
lead to
there's also a lot of
energy
around egos as well, isn't it? Because ego is an important thing. It's a useful tool. It helps us problem solve, and that's the whole reason it was here in the first place. It helps us reason our way out of problems. The problem is that ego's employed where heart should be employed, and heart's employed where ego should be employed. And if you don't make use of the right tool for the right job, then you're making your work all the harder, aren't you?
Yeah, it's knowing the right moment to use your brains, I suppose. But it's it's just praying that everyone does engage the heart more, because I suppose everyone's been engaged in the brain.
Wasn't it Einstein that said, was it heart without intellect is pointless and intellect without heart is tragic, or something like that?
I'm not too sure, but
there was some quote like that where it's like you just can't, you've got to bring them both together. You've got to bring them together, because science, when it doesn't have heart behind it, produces the most horrific things that you can imagine. It produces atomic bombs, it produces bioweapons, it produces negative, destructive elements. And heart without intellect can be very manipulative if it doesn't self-check itself and understand the role of the opposite. It's that, isn't it? It's finding that balance, and it's bringing everybody together, and it's everybody saying, let's put our egos aside and just work for what is provably going to be best for all of us.
It's finding the balance at this moment between actioning lawful action against those that need to be held to account and kickstarting the way forward, because even to go about kickstarting the way forwards at the moment, to just go and buy resources and meet up and start to build on land or whatever we're going to try and do, you stand the risk of being sectioned. If you stand up to a few police officers and tell them the real common, the real God's law, above common law, above everything, because the doctors were saying to us that they believe, or they've been told, statute law outweighs common law. So that's the approach of the doctors and police.
Well, that's just an objective lie, isn't it? It's just a lie.
Yeah, but that's the lie they're being told. So they're the ones that hold the keys on holding people, imprisonment or not, and that's what they're working from. And my reply to that, though, was, well, don't really care, because I work with God's law, and that trumps everything. Mother Earth law says no one that can escape that.
Yeah, of course.
Which I think was the right guided thing to say in that moment. Because you've always got to have you've got to have a trump card, haven't you, to play on the the tricksters of the world.
Well, I mean, this is it as well. Like, the lie is so pervasive now that even if you present people with the truth, they're still going to disbelieve it and carry on and do their own thing. So
it's like the gym owner. You know, he's presenting common law, but he was still arrested. With how many police were on the doorstep on that video? I mean, Jesus, about 15 police, 10 or 15 police.
Yeah, I mean, for my mind, like, there is definitely a way out of their system by using the way their system works, if that makes sense. And they've got to have left this door, because even when the big fish in this pond, in this system, even when they break their own rules, they are never held to account. So they must be using that get out of jail free card somewhere to avoid being prosecuted. You know, one of them's just been elected president, right? Pedophile. Like, how does he get away with not being taken to prison? Because surely, like, looking at even the videos and photos you've seen of that guy sniffing kids' hair, surely someone must have tried to put him in court by now, and he's gotten out of it somehow. So how has he gotten out? How are these big fish stepping out of their own system when it suits them?
I think they're purely by their association with people they know in certain circles.
I think there's an actual method that we can use that if they do, like, I mean, we don't choose to step into their court, right? We don't choose to engage with them, except on where we're trying to claim our assets back. That's the way I see it, right? But I learned martial arts, not because I want to fight or because I want to hurt anybody, but because if somebody wants to come and hurt me, I want to know that I can defend myself. So my sort of way of coming at this is, you know, great, I want to build our own system. I want to build our own way of collectively managing the resources of the world. But at the same time, I want to know if they try and drag me in one of their courts, that I can defend myself in one of their courts and not end up locked up.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And that's where I'd like to get to as well. I mean, obviously we're all working together on our circle on this, but we do need that almost.
I'm working on some documents, Mark.
It's we're almost having a little card of, like in Lethal Weapon, diplomatic immunity.
Well, that's it.
We need some sort of shamanic diplomatic immunity or something. I'm going to come at it from the shamanic point of view, and I've always said that. But
do it.
To say to them, and I've said this many times to the police, and I'll say this again when I approach them. And the time
part of my religion.
We've been doing this for 6,000 years to 3,000 years ago. There's 3,000 years worth of sweat lodge done in Sutton Park down the road here. Yeah. So we've got 3,000 years worth of ritualistic piling of sweat lodge stones. And it was the first thing that the shaman put me through in Peru was a sweat lodge. So yeah, we've got absolute proof there of our old tribes being shaman. And so somehow I've always had a feeling that there's going to be somehow we can have some form of diplomatic immunity, and one of the ways through that would probably be 5, 6, 7 different ways of being able to gain that level of diplomatic immunity is to declare yourself as being a shaman, but also almost having gone through the shit all through the system as I have, to be able to prove to them in a certain level that you are a healer and you can heal yourself, but doing it in a way that doesn't involve locking someone up against their will, but instead taking them out to Peru and working with Master Shaman over there, and they can then read someone and go, they're a healer, or no, they shouldn't be anywhere near healing, get them the fuck out of here, they're not a shaman.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense.
But that's the next level, is the vetting of the healers. Yeah. Because like the doctors, there's really good forensic psychiatrists in Birmingham, and that put their hands up when they met me and said, I'll be honest, I had to Google search what you do. So there's some really good, open and honest people that are on our side. But there's also some doctors that have only got one tool in the toolkit, and that's drugs. There's this level of discernment of professionals.
And uniting all those people, isn't it? It's finding those people that are willing to actually take personal responsibility for the work that they do, and bringing them all together and making us look like we're all flying the same flag, so to speak, because then we look like a legitimate entity that could manage the resources of a country, let's say.
And that's like me going over to my family meal now, that, you know, we sung from the same song sheet. All of us did as a circle to help get me out of that position. So as a handover to me going over to family time now, that is the key, is to us all network together. So not social media, social networking now. We need a network of our social powers, of all our skills, to be networked together in a solid circle now, to be able to share our gifts, and then we'll be free. And those people that are working in those positions just won't be working in them, because the system won't allow people to not give a shit in their position. So.
Brilliant. Well, let's knock it on the head here then, Mark. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for giving me so much time. Thank you to your lovely wife for putting up with my voice, you know, whittering around in the background while she's gotten up to what she is. Huge love to you all. Glad to see you, you know, back at home, healing and looking well and sounding well. And I'm hoping to have more interviews like this with you in the future, mate.
Yeah, man, let's catch up in a few days. I'll hopefully be less tired and less mumbly and more full of energy. But yeah, go on.
It's fine. You've done an amazing job. Thanks a lot, mate. Take care of yourself.
Yeah, man. Speak to you. Cheers, mate.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, mate. Bye-bye.